John, what a
Simone.
treasure. Look at the background. It tells your story. How could I not have you on board the transatlantic? Thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, we say a transatlantic that's like, you know, everybody's an ocean of erratic thoughts and wild feeling. And again, let me tell you, man, it's like you are one interesting ocean. I know you a little bit because we worked together in the past, and I was fascinated by your story, your journey. And now I'm very excited to share this like with like, you know, the transatlantic like followers. So let's get to it. First question.
Yeah.
And we go through the 7 C's, okay? Good.
Go.
This is a story of rain and thunder. From an early age, Frankenstein, the little fella like behind you, struggled with the moral dilemma of studying alchemy and science. He's totally in love with the idea of being in control of nature, but he must come to terms with his own fears. Now, when Frankenstein is 15 years old, a thunderstorm and lightning destroy the oak near the family house. Frankenstein believed that he was a guardian angel. He was a sign. Now, have you ever been caught by the dilemma, a moral dilemma of getting into advertising or not getting into advertising? Selling your soul or keeping it poor? What dilemma have you been caught with?
You went right for the juggler on that one, didn't you?
Right there, man, right there.
Okay, so yes and no, but probably mostly no, and I'll tell you why. So I went to art school. There wasn't anything called portfolio school when I was doing it. If you wanted to write, you probably studied journalism. If you wanted to be a designer or an art director, you went to art school. That's just the way it worked. So I thought I wanted to be an illustrator. And I could draw pretty well. And I was looking at things like book covers by like Robert McGinnis or Jeffrey Jones, or I don't know, there's tons of, Frank Frazetta, and I was always amazed by the ability of an illustration to tell a story, right? So that's what I thought I wanted to do. So I went to Pratt, and when I got there, I met a lot of incredibly talented people. Like some of these illustrators, some of these painters blew me out of the water. I mean, they did. And I'd look at what they could do, and I'd look what I could do, and I realized there was a pretty good chance that they'd starve. You know what I mean?
I know.
I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but it's true. I mean, it's a tough life, and there's a lot of talent out there. So I realized pretty early on that I needed a backup plan.
Right.
So, sure, I studied illustration and painting, but I also took some design classes, and I took some advertising classes. And I was pretty good at it, and it had the same elements of illustration that I liked, solving something through words or a visual, really. So I never really had the moral dilemma, I think, by the time I went and found a job, because I had already made peace with the fact that that's kind of what I was going to do. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I fell back on it because I couldn't get arrested, doing it as an illustrator. I fell in love with it. I really enjoyed, solving problems through images. And so that's why I say mostly no. But I will tell you, in the last 5 years or so, that's changed a little bit. But it's not the whole persuasion aspect of what we do, the idea of selling. That's what I do. It doesn't bother me.
Right.
It's really more the tracking that's kind of going on. You know what I mean?
Man, I know what you mean.
It's the retargeting. It's the it's talking to you about something and then coming back to my computer and seeing it served up to me as an ad.
Absolutely, man.
That bugs me. That morally, I'm a privacy guy. I'm a privacy advocate. I really, truly am. I mean, I won't even do one of those DNA tests to find my ancestors because I don't really want to know.
Well, we know that there is a part of your family that comes from Italy. So let's get it
Yeah,
out of the way.
yeah. I don't want to
out
know.
of the way.
Yeah, I don't want to know. Right, exactly. And also, do you really want to find out how you might die? Do you want to know that? I want to be surprised, So I don't know. I figure if you find out all that information, somebody else has that information as well. So I kind of get dicey around, the privacy stuff.
I relate so much to your answer, because when I got into advertising, for me, all I could do was writing, and I grew up in Europe, in Italy. So my Italian writing was very much on point. It was the only talent I had. And so at one point I just figured out, I don't want to be a writer and to be stressing about writing a sentence and know that sentence is going to pay the bill. So I'm going to get into advertising and use my writing talents to do something that's either way is going to be pay my bills. And so that was the reason why. But then, as you say, in the past 5 years, you get into that kind of space where you say, oh my God, this is so annoying. And the retargeting thing, I'm with you, brother. I mean, it's I can't look up at anything in my computer without having someone mysteriously popping up in my feed 24 hours later. And it get really tiring. Yeah.
And plus when you're writing, you're researching all the time. So you might be researching
absolutely
divorce. I don't know. And then next thing you know, you're pummeled.
Anyway, man. God, man. Second question.
All right, go.
In October 1990, a National Park Service finds a yellow Datsun in a dry riverbed lake. A note that has been left inside the car as a strange message. The car belongs to Chris McCandless, known as Alexander Supertramp. Sean Penn made a movie about Chris' journey called Into the Wild. It's a movie based on Chris' book.
Right.
Chris' mission was to cut ties with modern society and live off the land. So he embarked on an adventure that led him into the wild of Alaska. Mm-hmm. Among the thoughts that he wrote in his journal, one of them truly struck me. And it goes like this: happiness is only real when shared. So my question for you is, if you were to embark on a wild journey, cut tie with modern society, and disconnect completely from your life as it is today, who would you take with you?
Who would I share it with?
Yeah.
I'd take my wife, Lori, in a minute. No, I would. And if she wouldn't go, I'd try the kids. and if they wouldn't go, I'd probably ask my friend Harry Bliss, who's a New Yorker cartoonist and a pretty good friend of mine. And he'd keep me laughing at least. And frankly, he'd probably be the one more apt to go, because I think he's already kind of checked out up there in the woods of New Hampshire somewhere. But yeah, I think it would be probably Lori first and foremost, because she's super resilient, and yeah, would she enjoy dropping out of society? Maybe not. But I'll tell you, I wing everything. I mean, do you know what I mean by that? I wing it. I'm not really a guy that plans really well. I just sort of have always let things happen a little bit. Lori plans everything. Like if we ever went anywhere, she knows what we're doing, every second. And I'm the guy that's either 5 feet behind her or 5 feet in front of her, kind of looking up, and wandering a little bit, wandering up here as well. So I don't know. I think I'd need her around because she's kind of my rudder,
That's awesome, man. No,
she's my
I
runner.
perfectly relate to that.
And plus, dude, she's fucking adorable. Okay, so
yeah, I mean, what, like, it's a no-brainer,
it's a no-brainer. She's coming,
Yeah. But the story of Alexander Supertramp is a story that truly interested me and fascinated like millions of people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even before like Sean Penn made the movie about Christopher, it was something, I read a book that the journalist wrote about the adventure of Christopher. And as you know, I don't know if you know the story in every detail, but like,
I saw the show, the film.
Right. Yeah. Up until a few years ago, you could go to Alaska, Fairbanks, I think. It was a remote place in Alaska where the bus was, where there is the iconic picture of Christopher leaning back on an old school bus. Yeah, and that's where he passed away. But I remember reading these notes that he left behind. I mean, the guy went there, complete solitude, to find himself. But the last message was about the solitude and how happiness is only real when you share with somebody. And so I thought that was like magnificent, honestly.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah. Good, man. Fair question. Now, I believe that some oceans intended as human beings, because we believe that everyone is an ocean, force you to connect, to correct your mistakes and rethink the course of your actions. Now, follow me through this anecdote, which is quite interesting. October 1st, 1993, David Letterman removed a segment of Bill Hicks doing stand-up. He thought that the segment was like not good enough, too abrupt, too rough. It wasn't fitting the schedule and like the style of David Letterman at the time. Years go by, and in 2015, David Letterman invited Bill's mom, Mary Hicks, on his show and finally aired the segments, admitting publicly that he made a mistake. He say, what I was thinking, what a big mistake I made. That was the actually last performance of Bill Hicks. It should have been the last performance. Now, David Letterman correct his mistake. Take guts to walk back and acknowledge that you made a mistake and trying to repair the damage in front of everybody. We are in the advertising business where everybody's right. Everybody's fucking right all day, right? And when they're wrong, they're still right somehow. Now, have it happened to you that you present some work and the client say, this is wrong, but then the client call you back and say, even years after, and say, John, we were wrong, you were right?
Gosh, I mean, I would have to have a way better memory to be able to come up with an example of that. I mean, my sense is it probably has happened, but I have a feeling, well, let me put it this way. I've never really sold anything to anybody that they didn't really want to buy in the first place. I have a feeling that if it happened, we listened, or I listened pretty carefully to what their issues were with it. And then I went back and I fixed it or changed it to make it more palatable for them to buy. And then they probably bought it. So I can't think of one where they literally came back to me and said, gosh, you were right all along. We should have done this a long time ago. But there have been a number of instances where, I've gone and I've fixed things. Now, personally, I mean, so personal growth, I mean, I've probably had that happen a lot. There are certainly people that I probably passed on that years later, I realized that was a mistake and I probably shouldn't have. And, I've definitely hired people, who I knew and had seen and maybe passed on earlier, or I bought ideas from creative teams, later, just because I got so tired of them presenting it over and over. It's like, okay, but I mean, so I think I've grown more that way personally. but I can't think of an instance where a client has actually said to me,
you know, it's like if you go on YouTube and you watch this segment of David Letterman, it was so magnanimous from like David to do such an action, right?
yeah,
We could have just like let it go. Instead, invite like Bill Mom, he acknowledged, and he actually aired the segment. And before airing the segments of like Bill Hicks, he say,
right,
I was a schmuck, I was a dumb, like I don't know why I did that, right? In fact, hilarious segments, like
it's cool. It's really cool that he did that. I almost wonder though. Don't you wonder if the network just sort of said you can't air it, and maybe he just took the bullet online for it?
I wasn't there, but what I understood is like his decision. He actually say like, I made the wrong decision. It was my responsibility. It was me calling the shot, and I decided to not air it. And actually it's funny because following that decision, Bill Hicks wrote, I think like a 7-8 page letter to David Letterman explaining his act, his performance act, and why he should have been aired. Anyway,
Bill Hicks, he was terrific. He was so,
oh my God,
like, darn funny.
I mean, it sounds like a cliche to say to you that it was my hero, but I mean, it's like, I can count on my film like George Carlin, Bill Hicks, like, John Belushi. I mean, it's like these guys were like amazing. But I asked this question because sometimes I get caught in this kind of like dystopian universe where we are an industry that celebrates failure, but somehow everybody's right all the time. So where is this failure? And when someone fails, we are the first one to just go and hammer on the failing and say, you should have failed. So it's kind of like, you don't do what you preach. Like, you know what I mean? So sometimes I get caught in this kind of like strange universe that advertising is building around itself.
Sure.
And I find quite ironic. Anyway.
Yeah.
Good, man. We are up for a fight, and it's the fourth question.
Okay.
Hemingway once swung at Orson Welles during the projection of a movie for which Hemingway wrote the commentary.
Okay.
Now, the fight broke because Orson Welles had the guts to question the usefulness of the commentary written by Hemingway, bringing Hemingway blood to the boiling points. Now, bear in mind, these two characters share many things in common, not just like the look of the sea captain, weird beards, they truly look like sea captain, but also a certain love for stories that come from the sea. Now, they became great friends through a fight, which I found fascinating. Now, bringing this into your professional life, I remember when I started working at your agency, the first thing I asked, it was like, dude, that logo that you guys have on the door is freaking hilarious. And the logo was like two guys fighting and one referee standing beside them.
The wrestlers, yes.
And, right? Yeah. And so was fighting and arguing parts of your friendship with Mike Shine and Gregory Stern. Tell me the story a little bit, because that logo, man, is one of my favorite logos of all time.
Well, thank you. Okay. So the wrestler logo, the wrestler logo is semi-retired now, but we still use it from time to time. And I'll tell you the story of the wrestler logo. So before there was Butler, Shine, and Stern, there was Butler, Shine. And we left it took us probably 6 months to a year to convince Greg to come over with us and do this thing. So initially it was just the two of us, and we needed a logo. And we knew we were going to call it our last names. We weren't going to come up with a pithy name. We decided it's just going to be Butler, Shine, and hopefully Butler, Shine, and Stern someday. And I had a royalty-free rubber stamp book. And I just liked them. They were funny. And I showed Mike the wrestlers, and he went, we should just use that. That thing, it's just funny, And I guess you could say it's a metaphor for the creative process, right? Which is sometimes fraught with pushback. And we just thought it was funny, so we used it. And then what's really interesting about that is it became a concept later, because 6 months later, Stern said, I'm coming over. And we thought, well, he's the account guy, we should make him the ref. And we just, we drew
that's
in.
a genius move, man.
Yeah, we drew in the ref, and then it became an idea, right? And what's interesting about it is we got a gold pencil at the One Club for it.
Oh, man.
And it was kind of funny because it was an idea that sort of evolved, right? And actually didn't really start out as an idea. It just started out as some random, weird, funny thing. And then it became kind of a cool idea. So
I remember the day that you shared the story with me, and I want like you shared this story with other people. Maybe they know the story already.
Yeah.
But I found the evolution of the idea so fascinating, right? I mean, it's like, as you say, it didn't start as an idea. It was just something that you had for free. You didn't have to pay the royalty. But then when like a third part comes in and like a third guy comes in, now you guys like evolve the idea, and it literally embody the alchemy and like, you know, the structure of an agency back then. And it was beautiful, man. I loved it. And it was so, remind me, like, you know, those kind of illustration for a barbershop, you know, it's very like very bold style, like, you know, very, like,
well, it came initially from a rubber stamp book. You know, what's funny about it too is like, usually it's throughout the years, it was never really the two creative guys fighting and the account guy kind of overseeing. It was usually a creative guy and an account guy wrestling and another creative guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was always different. It revolved. So let's just say that we were really spirited, and you know, we probably did fight, but we never fought in front of the kids. You know, that was important.
Right.
We never fought in front of the kids.
That's awesome. Okay, good. We go for the fifth question. It's a question about James Dean.
Okay.
The American actor and cultural icon James Dean was a fervent student of the method acting, and he was a true ocean lover. In fact, he lived in Santa Monica for several years. He enjoyed taking long walks along the ocean with his dog. These are his words. He said, "Be an actor is the loneliest thing in the world. Now, you are all alone with your concentration and with your imagination." Now, according to Marlon Brando, another like icon and like a mentor to James Dean, he wanted so bad to be like Marlon Brando. Everyone is an actor in this life. Everyone is playing a role all the time. Now, that say, my question is more about your status, your role in your professional life. You are the owner of an independent agency.
Mm-hmm.
What's like to be in this type of position in 2021? Are you all alone with your pandemic nightmares and apocalyptic, like, you know, scenarios, as actors are alone with their imagination?
Well, I'm definitely not alone in my pandemic nightmares. I mean, that's something that's affected, obviously, the whole place. It's an interesting question. The pandemic has made doing business extremely difficult, as you can imagine. And our people, all of us, are probably working harder than ever before for, you know, pretty close to the same amount of money, right? I mean,
absolutely.
And it's not like the industry wasn't hitting headwinds, to use a nautical term for you, you know, before the pandemic anyways. You know, the biggest thing I can think of, the biggest hit, has been to the sort of the camaraderie that exists, you know, in a small, independent, privately held creative agency. A lot of the things that we solved, we didn't solve in meetings, right? It wasn't like, let's have a meeting and solve this. It was walking down the hallway, talking to somebody, and someone would have an idea, or it was walking into someone's office and seeing what they were working on and seeing a bunch of stuff hanging on their walls, right? And that's what got that's what always got me inspired and got me up for going into the office every day, is that there was a lot of really cool stuff for me to react to all day long. And I think the pandemic has just made that a lot harder, because now we're stuck on these little sort of Zoom calls, right, with one another, trying to solve problems. So, you know, it's been tough, but you know, we've been doing it, and I got to say, I'm pretty proud of the people in our place. I mean, they've risen to the occasion. They're pretty resilient. They've figured out how to do it. I think the work is better today than it was probably a year ago, believe it or not, when we started, you know, sequestering at home. But I miss going into the mothership, you know.
Right. No, I hear you. You touch a point that is very important.
Yeah.
You say you never solved anything in a meeting.
Mm-mm.
It were the moment in between that change everything. You walk into someone's office, you react to something, you crack a joke, like, you know. And to this point, to me, the metaphor is gonna make you laugh. But what the pandemic did, like, it's like before the pandemic, there was this beautiful, like, grapes, plushy grapes, and then, like, you know, we became all raisins, dry out completely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, like, that's the part of the agency life that will never be back. It will never be what it was before, right? So, and I'm sure we are getting better. We are getting the hang of it. So we're making the best of it.
Yeah.
Those moments in between, it seems forever gone.
Yeah. The only
Like,
thing that I'll say that has been that I've seen that's kind of interesting, and not just with creative people, with anybody, I think the ability to work at home and still sort of deal with life,
right,
has helped a lot of people in a weird way. I know, just, you know, even for me, it's like, I guess what I've discovered during this, we've all kind of discovered something, right? I've discovered is that you don't necessarily have to be sitting at the office to do it, right?
Absolutely.
And it wasn't that I was, like, you know, looking around for people and going, hey, you know, where are you? I was never that guy. It never really bothered me. But I have seen that, you know, if you give people responsibility and you tell them you got to get this done by this time, they don't necessarily have to be at the office to
I
do
agree
it.
with you.
And the other thing that's kind of neat is, for us, is a lot of people, you know, there are some people that don't want to move to the Bay Area for a lot of reasons, you know. They don't have to necessarily now,
Like,
right?
like, the freaking wind on the Golden Gates every day,
I know.
like on my motorcycle, like,
Yeah.
the genius that, like, concepted the Golden Gates without any, like, stopping lane if the motorcycle breaks. So
Right.
either you jump off the bridge or you just, like, keep going. Yeah,
Right.
for that kind of reason. Yeah. No, I hear you, man. It's like, it's you
Well, it's
know,
opened up a lot more. There are a lot more opportunities to hire interesting people that may or may not want to physically live in Northern California. And I think so. That's been revealing and interesting.
absolutely, man. I almost see the shore. Here, the sixth question. The
Is this
best,
thing? This is it. This is the end.
almost the end.
Okay.
Yeah, almost the end.
All right.
I'm not gonna play in the background Jim Morrison. This is the end, because this is not the beginning of Apocalypse Now. But you know, I see the shore. You know, we are arriving there. The best sailors know that to be out there in the open ocean gives you a sense of freedom like nothing else in life, right? You are out there in the open ocean. It's like you feel completely, like, you know, at one with the ocean and the water. You feel like your possibilities are limitless. This reminds me of a story I read about Francis Ford Coppola halfway through the production of The Outsiders, right when he was about, like, you know, to finish and, like, to finish the project and to, like, you know, drift through this project. He came up with the idea of Rumblefish.
Right.
So what he did, he didn't let it go. He actually started writing Rumblefish in the weekends when he wasn't shooting The Outsiders. In fact, if you look up the two movies, they are very connected, not just because, like, you know, Eleanor Hinton was the author of like both novel, but and some of the actors appear in both movies, but you know, they are shot with the same kind of like, you know, concept behind. So this told me that side hustles are so important, it's so brilliant sometimes because they can create like an enormous amount of energy. Now, side hustles are essential to the minds of creative, but I know that when it comes to monsters, comics, and a love for Frankenstein, my friend, you have more than a side hustle right there. There is an entire life, there is a career ready to be like switched on.
You don't think you can, no, you're not saying I can monetize this stuff.
No, I'm not saying that, but you are so involved. You are so involved with the world of comics. You are a collector. You are high-end collectors, and I follow you on Instagram. Like, you know, it's not just like entering and walk into your office and see like this beautiful like creation, but you are totally involved with that, right? It's more than a side hustle.
Yeah.
So, have you ever thought of switching gears and, like Francis Ford Coppola, putting your creative energy into another project?
Yeah.
Ending up writing a new life movie for yourself.
Interesting. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, we've all got side hustles. I think every creative person, right, does. I mean, I don't even think you necessarily have to be in creative, but
right.
I think everybody does something else.
Right.
I think. I mean, I do a lot of different things. I'm a maker. I like to make stuff. I'm a writer. I write. I help my friend Harry Bliss write cartoons. I'm uncredited. It's his thing. But writing gags for the New Yorker for a cartoon, it's similar to writing a print ad in a way, right? It's a get. It's like solving something visually and then with a caption. Caption is kind of like a headline. So I get a big charge out of that. And I just do it with him because he's my friend, you know? And so it's a fun little diversion. I've had a few things, you know, actually published in the New Yorker, as I said, uncredited, but it's cool. But I write. I've always written. I write a lot of different things, short stories, mostly screenplays. I have not had one sold, but I've come close. I've had them shopped around. And in the end, I still have the script, right? Even if it doesn't get made. I mean, someday it would be wonderful to you know, to have one actually bought, but even just selling it doesn't necessarily mean it gets made, you know?
Right.
But I just wrote one, I finished one and it's out, it's being shopped around now. It's called The Red Rose Girls.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an art film. I mean, it's a film about art. Yeah, it's a little pretentious to say it's an art film, but it's a film about art. And the Red Rose Girls were 3 female illustrators at the turn of the century.
Mm-hmm.
It was Violet Oakley, Jessie Wilcox Smith, and Elizabeth Shippen Green. And I'm telling you, dude, they were rock stars. They were contemporaries of N.C. Wyeth and Howard Pyle, which are kind of like, it's like the father of illustration and the first son, kind of. But these women were incredibly talented, and it's a fascinating story, really. It's I mean, what I wrote is based on a true story, but I've of course embellished, like all based on true stories. But at the time, at the turn of the century, you know, women weren't the breadwinners, and a lot of the male illustrators who were successful basically because they had a woman at home doing everything. Right? They didn't have to do jack because they had a woman completely dealing with life, and all they had to do was paint. And these 3 women one day just said, shit, let's get us a wife. So they did. And they all lived at the Red Rose Inn, which was outside Philadelphia. And the 3 of them became some of the most influential illustrators of the day.
What a beautiful story.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story because at the time, you know, there's something called the Boston marriage, and Boston marriages were relatively common, which was, you know, women who were good friends, right? You'd see women walking hand in hand, you'd see them, you know, kissing each other on the cheek, and no one thought anything of it because society at the time, and by society I mean men,
Right.
thought that only a man could please a woman, you know, so they didn't have anything to worry about. And then it wasn't until about 1910 or so when sociologists, psychologists were all of a sudden writing papers and saying, you know, these girls are doing a little bit more than just whispering sweet nothings to one another. And then it kind of turned, right? And something that was kind of innocent and sweet was looked at by society, again, men, as a perversion. And that's really where the story kind of takes off. That's the true soul of the story that I wrote, is kind of like how they sort of dealt with the world and how the world sort of, you know, dealt with them.
So interesting, man. So
Yeah,
interesting.
so that's my side hustle, and that's something that I just finished, and
You
I'm
know,
kind of excited about it.
and I wish you the best on this, because I mean, I would be like the very first person like
Thank
to
you.
to literally like either buy like, you know, a ticket to the movie, or like whatever it's gonna turn into, like, you know. And
Yeah.
that's why I do believe that, like, you know, you needed a referee, like, you know, you need a stand in
Wait,
life, because
wait.
you're constantly wrestling with your beautiful ideas in the little brain, and like, you know, you need like stand like on top
Let
of
me
you and
get.
say like, hey.
I gotta go back to this for just a second, though. Let me get a plug in.
Yeah,
All of your viewers have to follow the BSSP Monster Museum.
I do.
BSSP Monster Museum. It's a lifetime of hoarding on an Instagram page. So
Oh man,
it's
I
great
actually
fun.
do. That's why I conceived this question, because
Yeah,
and I wasn't aware. You didn't tell me about this link on Instagram, and it's like, but I found through like your official page on Instagram, and
yeah,
I enter. It's fantastic. That's why I think it's more than a side hustle. It's like almost like another part of you. It's a third arm. It's like, you know, talking about monster. Anyway, look, here's the thing, man. This is the last question.
okay.
For our guests, we ask, if there was a wind that blew your sail and you had to name it, what would the name be?
Oh my gosh. You mean what keeps me going? What
Right.
moves me
Yeah.
forward?
Yeah. If there was a wind that blew your sail,
I
you had to come up with a name.
Yeah, fear.
Fear.
Yeah,
That's what
I
keeps
think.
you going.
I mean, well, fear of like the unexceptional. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Fear of the anemic. Uh, you know, I want everything that I make or everything that's around me to be marvelous.
That's
You know what I
beautiful.
mean? I
Oh,
want it to be, or at my 15-year-old self would say, I want it to be badass. So I guess that's it. It's the fear of the fear of
yeah.
the fear of the
I love it, man.
ordinary.
I love it. Hey,
Yeah,
look,
yeah.
it was an amazing journey. Like, you are one of a kind, not because you are
Thank
now
you.
right in front of me or you're a friend of mine. I can consider you a friend, but
No
dude,
question.
your ocean is amazing. I wish you all the best, and like, you know, all the best on your screenplay, on your, like, you know, business, on everything. Like, thank you so much for being on board Transatlantic.
Thanks, Simone. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it.
Bye bye, man.
Take
Bye.
care, man.